Welcome to another episode of the Backbone Zone. My name's Tyson Jones-peni, and today we have Dr. Dave Camilleri on the show. Dave is a researcher at the University of Melbourne, and he has put his focus into doing research into BMX and all of the positives that come from it, from creativity to helping with mental health. And his latest research paper is on trail building, exploring the creativity in BMX trail construction. This was an epic conversation. This is the longest podcast that I've done by far, and I thought that it was super interesting. I could have kept speaking to him for all day. I love to hear his passion in understanding what it is about BMX and trails, and how it could help every BMXer as well as the general public. Dave, I think, is doing really important work for BMX and just doing the right stuff to help the general public understand the power of trail building and BMX. Also, if you want to head to the website backbonebmx.com and pick up one of these Tasty Trails hats, this conversation pretty much highlights the reason why we even made this hat, which is just to celebrate how sick trails is, all forms of it. And I love trails, and I love the fact that I was able to talk with Dave about just how important it is. So head to the website backbonebmx.com, have a look at some stuff there. Helps obviously support Backbone in continuing to do this podcast and just BMX sickness. And I really hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe, leave me a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. Onto the episode. Mr. Dave Camilleri, thanks for coming on to the Backbone Zone, mate. Appreciate you joining me on Saturday morning.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here. It's a privilege, and I'm looking forward to having a chat.
For sure, man. I think the first thing that we should do is just introduce who you are and, you know, your background with BMX, and then kind of leading into what you're currently doing.
Yeah, sure. So I think I started riding probably about 1994, late 94, I think it was, and I grew up northwest of Melbourne. And I think my first bike was a Mongoose Villain, and it's fully chrome and had a gyro and all this sort of stuff. And I bought it because I was rollerblading, and I was sick of rollerblading to the half pipe in Jakarta, and so I bought this to ride there. And then there was a BMX track next to it, just some humps, and started riding, and I didn't skate again after that. And it was just, I loved it, and then started building jumps around around Tullamarine, around that area. Then I heard of some other dude building jumps in another suburb in West Meadows, and this dude sort of hooked us up, and it was ERMS, and so this is probably about 95 or so, and and then from then just used to build with ERMS, and riding around there, building our trails, doing that sort of thing. And I moved to Malta 2003, I think it was, and I had been working, selling paint, and been unhappy with just life in Australia at that time. And I decided I wanted to go back to school because I dropped out, in year 10, I think, and so I hated school, just wanted to ride. And when I left, I'd go dig the jumps and then wait for ERMS to come home from school, and then he'll put his stuff away, and then we'll just dig right after school. And that was great. That was like when I was 16, 17, and loved it. But I had to get a job, so I started selling paint and stuff, and worked at Bunnings and did sort of just retail stuff like this. And then when I was like 22, I thought I'd go back to school, and started studying, doing this sort of thing. Moved to Malta, studied at uni there, studied philosophy, did like a honours in philosophy and then a master's in philosophy. And in Malta, it was interesting. Like I'd met a guy in 2001 on a trip over to Malta, and then randomly just ran into them. They were doing a show in Malta, the BMX show, which they used to do at these Maltese feasts. And I was like, um, just there for 6 weeks. I was 21, just sort of, there to have a good time and not necessarily, I didn't take my bike and ended up going to the BMX track there and met this dude, Julian Delia and Delia in Maltese. But we just kept on talking. And then I was like 23, I decided to move over there. And I messaged him and said, dude, I'm moving to Malta. And he's like, oh, let me know when you're here. And I took my bike over, and then he was just like family, like the Maltese crew over there from 2003 to like 2010. We built our jumps. We built the scene up so much. We had comps. We did like mini tours, like, the mega tour. So when the mega tour stuff was going on with, road falls, all that sort of stuff. We'd do our own little sort of versions around Malta, and it was awesome. We have different teams, and it was so much fun. And I was in my 20s then, studying and just riding and hanging out, digging, and heaps of younger guys, just digging with them, chatting and talking about philosophy all the time because I was studying and just learning stuff. And it was really, really fun, and we'd hang out. It was such a good community. And I moved back to Australia in 2010 and studied teaching, became a teacher, taught some of Jim's mates and Whitey's mates,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, it's a pretty funny connection. Took them to the skate park once in activity week down City Skate Park. But yeah, it's just teaching, and my writing started to sort of really fall off after 2013, 14. I was starting a PhD then, and we started to have kids, 2 kids, and I was off social media for 10 years, and so just really disconnected. Still, like, and my mate Julian in Malta still messaging me stuff, and like it's always there. But it's really interesting. After leaving Malta, I got into bouldering a lot more, and there was something that became just with BMX. I think leaving over there and having such a close crew, part of me was sort of mourning like that scene, and like coming back and then getting into this other stuff. It was really like doing a PhD, especially. It's hard to explain, but it's 80,000 words, and it took me like 7 or 8 years and quite some time. But um, it's like you've never got free time, like weekends, holidays. I was working full time, and you're always just thinking about. It's always the back of your mind and this niggling thing, like you always got to like, oh, I better go write this, or better there's a deadline. And so yeah, it was pretty epic, the PhD. It took me 7 years, 8 years, I think, and I took some leave. And I looked at secondary school students who struggle at school, especially those with above average intelligence. So even like we call them maybe high ability, but gifted kids. So kids are really smart in terms of their intelligence. With I won't go too technical, but my sort of thing was, well, if these kids are smart, why are they struggling at school? And so
Mm.
then I started to think about, well, what's the sort of situations we're putting young people into and asking them to learn, but also to show us what they know, because this is what school essentially does. You go to school, you're taught certain things, and then you have to show what you've known. And if you can't do that, then you're not going to be seen as successful at school. You're not going to pass school. And the way that we really do that at school is to ask kids to write things down, because that's what school's about. Teachers talk, they say um, certain things, instructions, then there's content, things kids learn about. But if students don't understand what's being asked for them, they're not going to be able to show what the teacher wants. And so my PhD sort of looked at that. Why do students struggle to show what they know, especially kids who've got really amazing thinking, complex, creative thinking? Why can't they show what they know in a classroom setting? And so a lot of it came down to being able to write, but also their relationship with the teacher. Do they trust the teacher? Because, if you don't trust someone, then you're not going to really show them what you can do. You're going to think they're not going to value it, so you take it somewhere else.
Mm.
And so it's the same with, trails or something. awesome video on your BMX, you're not going to show someone who doesn't care about BMX. You're going to show someone who cares about BMX. So some students are really selective about who they show what they know because they may not be able to do it, or they may be scared that their teacher's going to say that's not good enough, or there's a whole bunch of stuff. So my PhD sort of looked at that, and as I said, it's about 80,000 words of it. So
Wow.
I can send it to you if you like, but it's writing that, and it's something that was also deeply personal for me, being someone who dropped out of school. I struggled a lot. I got kept down twice at school, once in grade 5 and once in year 7.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I never finished because I didn't feel like it was a place where I could be me. And then especially getting into BMX when I was 15, 16. Yeah, I used to just want to go ride, want to go dig and that sort of stuff. So I didn't ever imagine I would want to get back into education or teaching or anything like that. So it was pretty funny to then find myself being a teacher and then researching and doing that sort of thing. And in that time, like I said, I was climbing, quite a bit, and which amazingly helped me with my riding. Like I feel like I'm sort of the strongest I've ever been in some ways on the bike, and I think a lot of it was especially from climbing, but also that just helping me to um, not necessarily train, because when you ride train, you don't try like normally train. Like growing up, we didn't train; you just ride, and that was it, And but I think just helping me to understand the sort of how to, get my body a bit more. I guess what's the word? Like all they're doing the smaller muscles, the stabilizers, not just trying to be big, strong. It's
Yeah,
more
yeah.
just like actually getting things to move and range of motion and that sort of stuff. So it helped me.
Proprioception too, I feel like with bouldering, probably very much like
Yeah,
minute, movements that you need to create to get that perfect hold. Not that I do bouldering, but it just seems like it would be
exactly.
very precise.
It is. And the visualization, there's a lot of overlaps, but there was one thing that really I didn't I struggled with it, and I used to go to the gym, but also go outside. Was there wasn't enough play, and this is where I love BMX because of the play aspect, and we can talk about it more in depth a bit later. But
Mm.
and even sometimes everyone's really serious at the gym, and they're all there to conquer, and it's like yeah, that conquer mentality was a bit too much for me, and then sort of going into the pandemic and stuff. And through those years, especially with the kids, we'd go sometimes to the skate park. They were still a bit young and stuff, but I'd take the bike out, behind the house or go somewhere, have a bit of a ride, bit of a bunny hop, do some manuals. I always felt like I never wanted to forget how to manual. So even I'd just go out sometimes and just manual up and down the street um and it's so funny because and we'll talk about the research later, but um we did focus groups, and one of the questions that I did ask the riders was, is there a trick that you always do to prove to yourself that you've still got it? And some guys will be, I'll be like a bunny hop bar spin or a bunny hop tail whip, or I think all of us have got these sorts of little things that we still do. Oh, I can still air 4 feet or 5 feet. We've got these indicators to show that we've still got it, and so yeah, for me, it's like, my bunny hops or my manuals, but it was back then anyway. But around the sort of pandemic, I'd almost finished my PhD, and then my father died in 2020, just at the start of the pandemic. And it wasn't because of COVID, it was pancreatic cancer, and it was really quick. And I'd almost finished my PhD, but I took some leave because of that, and had to do what I needed to do for that. But something in me just switched off with bouldering. I thought I'm not sure what it was, but riding, I was dreaming about riding again. And that there was this, like, my partner said to me, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I said, to be honest, it's just, I had this dream where I was just floating through some jumps. I said, I want trails. I need some trails. And and there's some trails around here. It's hard, with the sort of trails, the sort of thing, and we can talk about some of that later. But um, yeah, it was awesome then when matchmaker Whitey, introduced me to flags and sort of Blackwoods, and yeah, I think I've been sort of digging there just over a year now, and it's about 3 years old, and yeah, try to, on top of the research, doing those focus groups as part of that research and talking to, trail builders and just, it's it's been something like digging is just was something that was so deeply ingrained in me from like a teenager and building and that sort of thing. And for those years where I wasn't digging, it's really funny. I felt like there was something that was missing. And I was thinking about this earlier today, um, in terms of, when your imagination is captured by something and that's all you think about, it's like, oh, I just want to finish that jump or I want to build this. And it's almost like being in love with someone or having like being infatuated when you can't stop thinking about them or that sort of thing. And it's like, when your trails, when you've got that connection to trails, it's such a creative output, and it's like your imagination and so much is invested in it. But all of those years where I didn't have that in, um, it felt, yeah, it felt like there was something missing.
Mm.
And I got a big bike at some stage too, and I was there's a whole bunch of trails and stuff where I live. It's in mountain bike ones I live in Castlemaine, so Harcourt, and there's a lot of, stuff that's been done. And I'd go down and I'd never be satisfied. Like like I'd be tired and it felt good, but there was some jumps there. Sometimes I'd be pumping and I'd be just trying to get that sort of feeling, and it just wasn't the same, And then yeah, and then so with Blackwoods, and even last year, June Jam and stuff, it was so awesome to yeah, to hit those jumps and, just ride and just have unlimited laps, and just do as many as you can. And yeah, so, I never, oh, what's the word? I always try to take every session like, um, not that's going to be my last, but, I'm 44 now. So obviously my years are, numbered. I'm not that old. I'm not trying to say that. And hopefully, it's great to see older riders like, Mad Dog and, even now, Evan,
Mm.
he's awesome, to see those guys are just keeping the pioneers, they're boring through the tunnel and we're sort of following along, but it is really good. But, for whatever reason, it is just, I try to appreciate like just every ride and, have as much fun as I can, riding. And, when a good riding session is good, it's just, it's, yeah, it's unmatchable. Like, like last, I think at Valley View, just before your 360 crash, that was like that was peaking. I think people were
Yeah.
just, and you were just, it was going off. And that is such a good feeling just to see people, everyone just, and that's a good thing again about riding, it's not everyone being the best. It's about just having a go and having
Mm.
fun. And that's the sort of stuff that researchers sort of come to. But yeah, for me, yeah, I've never been necessarily a big trick person. I give a few things a crack. I've landed like 4 or 5 tail whips or something. Some but my shins have died. I don't know, 4,000 times trying. But yeah, it's just for me getting through trails and hanging out. It's just been it's nice to really sort of fall in love with it all again. I think there was that sort of that time where yeah, there's a lot changing. Your 30s, I think for anyone is a pretty big time, and obviously 20s are big, but 30s are different, I think. But for me, there was a lot going on with the study and yeah, for a family, you've got kids. It's pretty epic, and BMX isn't something that people normally do. And when you do something people don't normally do, it can be much more difficult. And especially with trails, it's something that, like I think we were talking about earlier before we started recording. It's hidden. and it's something that people don't necessarily understand, you know. And so whenever you do something that people don't understand, they'll ask you, well, why do you do that? Why do you ride? Or aren't you a bit old to ride? There's all these questions that they might ask, and then you know, it's like swimming upstream sometimes. You know, you
Mm,
get tired after time. It depends on your circles. That's why I think a lot of BMX is just in BMX because that's the best way to protect yourself from
for sure. Yeah.
riding. Because if other people they don't get it, you know,
Correct.
um, and that came out again in our research in our focus groups that
Mm,
a lot of the BMXers just are friends with BMXers. But then it's been a problem if they're injured and they can't interact and they don't have other friends they can call on, you know, and
for sure.
um,
So
so yeah, sorry.
with I've got so many things to ask you even off the top of all that, but I think what we should do is one, the PhD stuff was really interesting. I want to go back to that, but the first thing that I want to do is just make sure that I can get it clear for everyone that's listening or watching or whatever, because they don't know you like I do, or maybe they haven't seen you on social media or whatnot. But exactly what your focus has been and who you have been in terms of this whole BMX research that you've been doing. So maybe if you could go into that, and then I want to go back to a few of the other things that you said because you had some really really cool touch points. So yeah, if you can explain the research and what it is that you've been doing specifically for BMX recently, that would be awesome.
Yeah, no worries. So, yeah, about a year or so ago, so post PhD, and coming from the PhD, and seeing that there was a lot of young people who show their creativity outside of school, I thought, well, maybe what would be good is to explore that a bit more. But given my experience in BMX, I thought, well, actually, you know what? There's a lot of interesting stuff that's gone on in BMX and that goes on in BMX that people don't know about or that's not really it's not so much appreciated, but and this is a tension in my research. It's like, well, what am I researching for? Is it to prove to others that it's important, or is there something else? You know, and for me, and I can go into that, but um, it's about in some sense, especially with trails, protecting trails, and so the research that we're doing is really trying to understand the creativity that goes on within BMX culture more broadly, but specifically, I released a paper on trails and looking at the trails in creativity. I'm also working on a paper which is very close to being submitted for review because it has to go under when you submit to a journal, it gets peer reviewed by two people who don't sort of know us. It's a blind peer review, so that's going to be generally on creativity and the embodied creativity and the importance of perception in BMX because how you perceive something will then determine how you act, and so BMXers see the world in a different way to other people. You know, a set of stairs to BMXer is it different to someone else. Even like a person with a disability, they see a set of stairs different to a person who's able-bodied, you know, but
Mm-hmm.
then the BMXer sees it as this whole other sort of set of thing. And someone who does parkour, skating, etc. You know, there's a different perceptual set. But the research that we're doing now in some part is looking at that creativity stuff, but also looking at well-being and looking at the impact of BMX on well-being and trying to understand, I guess, aspects of the community and how BMX might bring a sense of belonging to those who do it. I think, being in BMX, yeah, and outside of BMX, I have felt like I've belonged, and then I've felt like I haven't belonged. And when um, and I was giving a presentation at work, and one of my colleagues had mentioned sort of two themes that she felt was coming through in what I was saying, and one of them was authenticity, and the other one is authenticity and now I can't remember. Forget now, bloody hell. But we're talking about trails and dry guys, basically, and whether you put in or not, and that sort of that effort that you put in, whether or not that makes you authentic or not. It's
Mm,
like your contribution, and are you just acting or not, and sort of then the sense of belonging that sort of comes with that. But basically, and I'll try to think of those two themes sort of before. I can go on tangents, as you probably know,
No,
but
that's I love it.
yeah, bringing it back to sort of what I was saying before with the well-being stuff. Basically, with um, BMX, it's such a rich practice that's been sort of underexplored, and it has the potential, I think, to engage different people in different ways, depending on, how old you are or what skill level you are. There's different ways in which you can sort of tap into the sort of culture. And I think there hasn't been the support for that to flourish from, you know, and I know you've spoken about mountain biking and stuff previously on other podcasts, and how much support gets given there, and it enables a real growth in that sport. And I think BMX has been misunderstood for quite some time,
Mm.
and there's been a misperception around quite a few things, and a misperception around risk, I think, especially around the dirt jumps. And there is a lot of interesting research on, getting kids outdoors and getting them to engage in risky play, and, the importance of all of this. And so, from my experience, I thought BMX is, a perfect candidate for this, because this is what it does. It gets you out. It gets you playing. Like I was saying before, it's very different to mountain biking in the sense that you're not just trying to go from point A to point B in the fastest possible way. Unless you're Tom Mallet, well then, you're doing all sorts of crazy stuff on the way, which is very different. That sort of playful mountain biking is quite different.
Mm.
And I think, that playfulness is so important. And there's a Canadian academic, Wade Nelson, and he's BMXer, old school BMXer, and he did his thesis on BMX and the media, and how BMX magazines make pros, or they did back then.
Mm.
Like, if you got magazine coverage, then that was basically going to lead to that. And so it's very different now, because social media has changed that. It's not so concentrated. So being a pro, or uh, the process to becoming a pro is very different. Anyway, but
Mm.
Wade Nelson, he did a good podcast with Matt McDuff, the big air sort of guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And he talks about, playfulness in BMX, but also the difference between participation and performance. And our research is really looking at participation, and what participation can lead to in terms of creativity and well-being, less so than we're not so interested in, performance side. How do we get the best BMXers to become Olympians and all this sort of stuff? So our research is really focused on grassroots. Even that's where the digging, the trail stuff, that's like the most, I think, I guess, rudimentary, basic part of BMX. And, this is what you're saying on the Snake Woods video, where kids just still go out and dig in their spot, and it's just their little place, and the sense of agency that comes with that, and that agency is such an important concept, because we want to feel like we have things in our life that we control. And even though with trails, you're going out, you're digging, and there are things that you can't control, the weather and these sorts of things, you can try to mitigate those things and be successful.
Mm.
And so doing that from a young age, thinking, and watching videos, like, I grew up watching, the Anthem, Home of the Brave, all this sort of stuff. And one of my favorites was Shank with Freddie Chulo, and they've got the big jump in it. There's heaps of sheep hill stuff. Like, we just wanted to build sheep hills whenever we dug. So you watch that and go, all right, sick, let's go do that. And it's got this thing in here, and then you turn that into your thing. And then that's your sort of little world. And when you've got these other people doing it with you, it shows you that hard work can lead to something, and you reap what you sow was one of the old sayings, wasn't it? For
Mm.
trails. Um, it's just that having that sort of be something that you can, I guess, utilize as a young person, but then sort of carry that through. It's really special. And I think, anyone who's been a part of trails understands that, and it's not to say trails are perfect because there's always stuff that goes on. I think there's, politics and there's all sorts of dramas that can arise, but um, it is something that I think I see it as that sort of a creative co-op, almost like a garden that we're all sort of working on. And one of my favorite old movies was Pleasure Farmers, and the sort of Volatile Visions, South Australia crew, Pleasure Farmers. That was, I think, that what Digging Jumps was like. It's just so much fun, and then, hearing that come out of researchers, sorry, out of the participants in the research, and it was really interesting. And then explaining that to my colleagues, and we talked through different points, and it was a whole process. But, I'm looking at really trying to understand and put it into the sort of the academic world in some sense, because with that there comes some legitimacy and credibility, especially for councils and other, I guess, institutional powers. And it is a matter of sort of describing what's happening. I don't think I have. You know, it, it's like I said, it's such a rich thing. I'm not there making up things about it. It's there, and it came out so clearly. We reached saturation point with our participants, which means that they were basically saying the same thing. So it wasn't a
Mm.
point sort of we stopped the interviews at 26, and we yeah, it was really interesting to hear all those different viewpoints. But um and then that resonating with me, and then explaining to my colleagues, well, what does this mean? Because it's so funny. Sometimes some of the words that were coming up, like X ups and three this or did that, or, in all the interviews, you had someone else with me, and my colleagues had no idea. So that was pretty fun, sort of trying to translate, what that was saying. And uh, the position I think that I'm in some ways is trying to translate BMX to that sort of academic language, so it's been translatable to the sort of institutional um, powers, whoever they may be,
Mm.
councils, other governments, who struggle with dirt jumps. And I have heaps of councils reach out to me, and sending them, either if it's research or they sort of, there is a struggle from certain councils to understand the value of trails. And I think this talks to the Black Snake, the so Snake Woods video again that you're talking about. And um, you know, councils see them as a risk in, people obviously hurting themselves in that way. Also, there's a cultural significance. Is there Aboriginal history? Is that going to be dug up? There could be sensitivities around that. Ecological difference, ecological significance also, which there's, and often this can be warranted. And I think about sort of Australia and in some part what we've done with mining and degraded the land in so many different ways. And it's not like we necessarily cared about it, but I think there's definitely a tension between um, you know individual need and what needs to happen locally, and then a misunderstanding between what needs to be done and how it can be done. Because I think also a lot of councils becomes really complicated to just get dirt there and to let people work with it to do that, that's almost impossible because that's all it takes. Just put dirt there,
Yeah, that's right.
and the guys they know what to do. You
Yeah.
don't have to think about it.
Mm,
But it's more complicated than that because of all these reasons. And some councils will say, well, there's no digging, and because of there can be like if there's if it's a culturally significant place, an environmentally significant place, then a plan can be put in place to not to damage that. You could not dig or dig in certain areas or dump dirt there, and there's different ways to work around it. But for some councils, it doesn't even get to that because I think
that's
there's
right.
not they don't know how to value it, and sometimes you need a champion in the council to say this is important. I'm going to help you out, and
Mm,
going to do this. Does that make sense?
totally. Yeah. So I think obviously there's a shitload of high value touch points that you've spoken about. Um, but just to start with that whole council issue and say just the legitimacy of jumps, right? So we're just talking about where can we go from here? The big thing with trails after you've just said that is that it's very clear that it's important. Like it has huge cultural significance, not just to those that are building it, but it almost like emanates out into the greater BMX world. Like that's why I said what I said on that video. I said that trails is no doubt the most revered thing because I personally feel like that's almost the precursor to all of BMX. Is when you're a little kid, you build a jump and you ride it, and then it just evolves from there until you've got places like Posh or whatever. But with this whole legitimizing of trails, I think that's where it's so important. What you're doing is to, I guess, you're creating these research papers that then people can go and point to and say, see, this guy has done real research. He's gone and reviewed different places. He's spoken about it in an unbiased way, or that's what the whole point of the research paper is, to try and be as unbiased as possible.
Mhm.
And I think that now it's like that next step. It's like, how do we get this out there more? Like when a lot of people in the comments of that of that post that I did was like, once it's public, it's like not worth it, or like why would we ever have public trails? And I totally get it. Like I agree. That's just sort of the headache that's happening with Hillfire at the moment. The jumps that I got built at Stromlo. It's like once you get this public space, then it's almost like a free for all. It's like it's where the dry guys come to hang out because you don't get the sense of agency that you said, where you've created something and you get to control it. But I just think that it would be great to be able to have some sort of steps that people who have built trails for a long period of time, where there's clearly not any short-term use of the land,
Mm-hmm.
in another sense. I think there should be some sort of way to mitigate the destruction of this sort of stuff, because there's obviously really huge benefits for it. One of the things that I guess we can tie into maybe your answer, or you can just give me an idea, your ideas on how we can achieve that. But I loved what you talked about with one, risky play being so important for children, adolescents, and young adults even, and just also you said this at the start, but you were basically saying that it's harder for people to understand what you do when not a lot of people do it. So you said that BMX is one of those things that not a lot of people do, which kind of then feeds into this idea of play, and how I think that play is the X factor of BMX. Maybe if we could speak on those things, maybe I can get to hear your thoughts, and then maybe if you have any solutions that you've been thinking about in terms of trying to legitimize trials.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, like I think yeah, BMX, and trails, it can be that entry point into into riding, but obviously there's entry points through skate parks and pump tracks, and often there's parents with the young person there. But then if they go down to these local jumps with their mates, they're probably not going to be parents. And so there's a real difference between, and you remember, there never used to be parents at skate parks. It was Lord of the Flies. Anything could happen. You know,
That's a
it,
good reference. That's a good
it,
reference.
it used to be crazy, and it's very different now. And
Mm.
so and I know you sort of mentioned a quote before, we'll start talking about that O'Keefe quote about, when young people find spaces outside of the sort of viewing of adults, and the academic term is the adult hegemony of public spaces. So typically adults get to decide what happens in public spaces. Okay. Now, trails happens outside of a public space. It, you young people find a place where they can't be viewed, where they can't be found, and um, when you become a trail builder, it continues into adulthood, you know, and and it's really interesting because and there's a paper done by someone in the University of Sheffield, England, Dr. Liam Healy, on sort of exclusionary practices in BMX, in trail building, and that as a way of protecting the jumps, basically. Like we have to exclude people from the jumps to protect the jumps.
Mm.
But you've got to exclude the council, got to exclude dry guides, there's all these people that we have to keep away from because we need to protect. But then what happens is start to become isolated, and so
Yeah. Dude, can I
um,
just? I don't want to ruin your train of thought, but I think it's so funny that there's legitimate research done on keeping dry guys out. We have such an issue with dry guys being entitled, like, oh, this is just public land. Like, why aren't you letting me ride these jumps? And it's like, we always have this thing, well, you go stand in that field and ride that field. Like, the jumps
yeah,
didn't get there by themselves. Like, it was a shitload of hard work.
yeah.
And I just think it's really funny that there's legitimate research that's been done on the exclusion of people to protect the greater good of the actual jumps. I just think that's really
Oh,
funny.
yeah, yeah, and if let's think about other places, like I guess, golf clubs are public land, but you can't necessarily just go into there, or there's different things, but a golf club is more legitimate. And just a bit of a side note to
That's right.
talking, a side note to the risk thing. If anyone listening wants to check this out, I don't know if it's true, but I reckon more people die on golf courses every year than they do BMX trails or jumps or BMX in general.
Mm.
So I don't know. I haven't had the time to research that one fully, but it's a challenge to anyone who's keen out there. I reckon more people die playing golf. But getting back to the whole dry guy thing, or those exclusionary practices, they're there to build the jumps, but then they also build that camaraderie between the people doing it. But then, it's when you're doing that, it can be then hard. It can be hard to maintain doing that. Continuing to ride as you get older is difficult in itself. Especially if you are a tradie, or you work with your body. If you break your leg, or if you continuously do that, and again, this is something that came out in our research. Where there was one person who said his mate, pretty much his boss said to him, if you get injured again, your job's gone. And so the dude quit riding because he didn't want to lose his job. So it's just like those sorts of pressures, they sort of they mount up, and people often, as they get older, stop playing sport. Like even it's really interesting though. Like with organized sports like footy and cricket, there's even bigger fall, and people are taking up cycling and these sorts of things much more than organized sport. There's a drop in that, and um, what's also really interesting in about that getting out the risky play and stuff is that neurodiverse young people are more likely to be at risk of sedentary behaviors, so sitting down and not exercising and that sort of thing, and then video games on top of that can be really problematic. But I think BMX could be a really good also way of engaging young neurodiverse youth because and it's really interesting because I've had quite a few emails from parents saying that, my child with ADHD or autism, whatever it might be, they really love BMX. They've met people who just accept them for who they are, or, like it can be really th those adult spaces can be really positive also. Like I'm not necessarily trying to talk those down. I'm saying that the good thing about BMX is there's all these different spaces, and
Mm,
even with the Olympics, it's so awesome. And like I said, I'm not necessarily trying to do research to generate Olympians or my kids go to Olympics or anything like this, but I think that's awesome that that's a pathway to BMX, and I think again this is something you've touched on in other podcasts about R. Willie, and whether that's good for the sport or not. And I just think yeah, anyone who's having fun on a bike, then it's fantastic.
for
It's
sure.
that's whatever the entry point is, and I think they'll find where they fit.
That's
You
right.
know, like why sort of be a snob about it or just open the gate. You want to go riding, but the trails is a different thing because it is something that is so hidden, and I think there is potential for it to be public. Like I think Stromlo is yeah, an interesting point, but and I can talk that in a second. But before I forget, there's a great place that I went to in England called Jippo. It's I think it's around the sort of could be Grimsby area. I can't remember, but and they're having a jam soon. I don't know if you have Jippo on Instagram, but yeah,
No.
follow Jippo.
Okay.
And like the guys out there, the Grandmaster Sass and Clay, like they've been running that for 25 or so years. It's a public spot. People come, like they're just, it is, there's always going to be people who don't want to necessarily put in, and those two concepts that my colleague was talking about before were authenticity and accountability,
Oh, sure.
so, you know, I think the dry guy, being called dry guy is being held accountable, for not being authentic, basically. But that sense of authenticity, you can fabricate it or pretend, but deep down, you know it. So it's like for me, the way I reconcile it is I'm jumping the jumps that I know how much work I've put into it, and that makes me feel better when someone is jumping the jumps that they haven't put work into. It's different for them. They
Mm,
can't feel like they've necessarily done it authentically, right? And this is my, I guess, what's the words, a belief that I have about um, when you work in something, like if you buy a house and the garden's great and people come, oh, wow, your garden's so great, and you say, yeah, thank you, but you haven't done it, it's not the same as if you've done it. Do you know what I
for
mean?
sure.
Like,
Yeah.
so I think it just sort of figures itself out, and I'm going to be digging anyway. It's just going to let's get this done. And Flags is the champion. Like he's so good, and and yeah, we've got another guy, Jake, is really solid, and the boys come out, the whole crew, help when they can, how they can. Some guys chop up, clean up some of the wood, or if someone's got a sore back, it's like, can you cook the barbecue? There's different things like stuff's got to get done at trails, so it doesn't matter if you're not necessarily there on the shovel. Like just sort of you can help this way or that way, but it's hard because we can't have a massive crew because it's private land. There's
Yeah.
neighbors, there's those sorts of tensions.
Hmm.
And again, that's a product of the sort of I guess that the wider context around them being hidden or not, but. I have recently just got in contact with a local Castlemaine Rocky Riders Association. The president is really keen to get some dirt jumps, hopefully in town. So we're going to try to do that here in Castlemaine, which would be nice. But you know, councils like showing councils the importance of it in some part. Yeah, it's about this sort of research and in about what is it, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? No, actually, about a month or so. We're going to film something for Channel 7 in St Andrews at the jumps at St Andrews. They're just a little public jumps there, but they want to film something around the benefits of BMX for
Oh,
like a
cool.
wellness show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So Ben out there has been keeping those jumps going for so long, and it's awesome to have that little spot. And I think it was Jayham, maybe he mentioned something the other day on social media about the pump track and their tabletop line being the most important line. And
Mm,
it's just, yeah, the big jumps are great, and people can get there, but it's just like, do you want that sort of pipe? How are you going to produce that pipeline? And so different cultures in England, USA to here, and it's trails, yeah, the stuff that Crandall does with Radshare, like
hmm.
that's also awesome. And it's so good to see just that next generation just having fun and jumping through the jumps. And
For sure.
we, especially in Victoria, like we don't have, we've got heaps of pump tracks and stuff like that. And there's a few councils that have done a good job with jumps, but um, yeah, it's so different. We need like a BMX freestyle Victoria, something like that to
Mm,
buy some stuff. Like, there's a mountain bike series, Vic mountain bike series, where it goes to different schools and kids do mountain bike
yeah.
challenges.
Yeah, yeah.
One for school age BMX kids. I think especially off the back of the Olympics and stuff. And
For
I
sure.
think there's scope for that. And it's not so much. It's interesting. Like, it's not a question of whether or not BMX needs it. I think it's whether or not those kids need it. Like,
Mm,
imagine being at school and just, even if you're trails, you probably still want to go to do something like this. It's like, sick, it's BMX, I'll give it a go. Or,
for
do
sure.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And um and it's just sort of, you know, yeah, I think it just opens that sort of entry point, people having a good time and riding and having a bit of fun. And but yeah, there's so many to sort of unpick. And like what it just made me think of, and I just had a master's student do some research on how to use BMX as a pedagogical tool in schools. So like for outdoor ed or PE. And so we'll hopefully get that stuff published
Oh, wow.
time next year. So for PE teachers or outdoor ed teachers, they can look at it, and part of it is about how to mitigate the risk in a school context. And so because even if they did flatland or something in school, like there's so many different things that you could do with BMX. It's
For
not
sure.
that one thing.
Oh,
It's about playing on a bike.
man, we had when we did our Ride or Walk to School program, like for one, they did a bit of research with all the schools. They went and did a survey. What sport would you like to do? And it was like overwhelming. BMX freestyle was the thing, or BMX. And
Amazing.
so we did a pilot program in 2013 to
Mm.
10 schools, and it was so popular that we ended up doing it at 52 schools across
Wow.
Canberra, including going to Jervis Bay or whatever. But like, we were turning kids into BMX riders. Like, I'm pretty sure that there's kids that now ride full blown BMX
Yeah.
because of that. And it was as simple as like doing some bunny hops and manuals and stuff. It wasn't like we were doing the most groundbreaking stuff. And in fact, we did demos at the start of for the first 2 years. We were lugging around this massive box jump, and we do like demos on this box jump that was pretty gnarly. Like, it was a pretty steep land, like way steep, too steep of a landing to do a demo on. And the kids didn't have as much enjoyment with that as when the following years, when we built this little less than 2 foot tall tiny box jump that we could pull apart and make into a long jump. Because at
Yeah.
least then the kids could see the path, like they could ride over it. And then
Yeah.
and the more advanced kids could kind of show off, like do a little flick out or whatever.
Mm.
But it's that, like what you said with the trails, it's like a pipeline. Like, I kind of wanted to touch on that. I do feel like, I don't want to say better, but I think that the UK trail scene, maybe just because trails are much more prevalent in BMX in the UK, from what I can sort of see. There's so many spots and maybe the weather, whatnot. But they seem to be a little bit further down the road in terms of inclusivity of that next generation. You know, they've kind of realised that, oh, hang on, we're all getting older, and if there isn't this place that we can draw kids to build the small stuff, then how are these big jumps going to continue?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think population is probably a big factor too. You've got just more people, more riders.
True. Yeah, that's a very true.
But I think you're right in that there's like because even with the big wheels, the 24 and having sort of the hardtails a lot more into it, and yeah, like the guy that I mentioned before, Liam Healy, like he is part of this place called Bowl Hills, which is a sort of jump. An ex-BMX track that they've turned into like a dirt jump thing. I think he goes dig there, and it's all organized by committee. It's all sort of legitimate in that way. And so I think there's an array of ways that they can do it over there. And um, yeah, it's England's so good. When I was living in Malta, we used to go over and ride jumps there, and it's yeah, shout out to Alki and the sort of English crew and Neb and all that. There's old Chapel Woods. It was so good. We go there, we camp out, and you spend. And again, it'd be so funny because people say, "Oh, where you going? We're going to England. Oh, what are you going to do? Oh, we're going to go to this place." And like, what's there? It's like Wigan. It's just outside of Wigan. And it's like, oh, some jumps, and we're just going to camp there for 7 days. What at these jumps, pretty much. That's what we did. And that was the ultimate holiday. Was just camping at trails and hanging out, and just having a great time. And yeah, it's interesting. Like there is, I think yeah, there hasn't been. There's been a lot of barriers around digging, and yeah, I don't know. And I think Melbourne, I guess there's a lot of street culture. It's quite sort of street, but yeah, I'm driving up to Byron after Christmas. We're doing a bit of a road trip,
Cool.
the family, but I'm going to go to a few spots on the way, which I'm really excited about.
Sick.
Yeah. I'm assuming I'm going to survive them all, and it's going to be a great holiday. But we'll see how we go. But no, I'm really like looking forward to that, and it is like it's so good to have that privilege to be able to visit to these spots because it's such a special thing because of like what we've been talking about, where it's just been hidden in that way, and um, but I think there is. I think it's the perception of BMX is changing a little. I think because of the Olympics
Mm.
um, yeah, there's some interesting research on this, looking at BMX's attitudes to it, but also the impact it's had on even like families in China around Chinese riders
Oh wow.
riding, and the family saying, well, because it's in the Olympics, then it's okay. It's worth them getting hurt or whatever it is. Yeah, it's like even though like it for yeah, and if you can get your parents off your back riding, if they're not supporting it, like, that's great. And I think, some of us have got the rad syndrome where, our parents never quite understood what we were doing, or really accepted it. And like with the research, there was a few people saying, yeah, like, they used to get hurt and they come home and they wouldn't even tell their parents because they were like, oh, you need to stop doing that or all this
Mm.
sort of. So, and that happened in adulthood where they were at work and they were limping and people say, oh, what happened? They're like, oh, I fell off my road bike or something, or, they wouldn't tell them it's a BMX. So, I think for some, there's still that sort of, yeah, it's almost like a rad syndrome where it's not accepted by the people around you until you're a champion, and then everyone loves you, and they're like, oh,
Yeah.
well, okay. But but yeah, it's interesting. Like I don't know. I think with the jumps, there's definitely scope for it to be public. Like yeah, I think it's really like the stuff that I'm doing is trying to give it that sort of research legitimacy to show, because we know belonging is really important, and when you belong to a place, it's really important for your well-being. And I think trails in the right way can do that, just like other sort of clubs can do it. But they're really good thing about it is that sort of other sense of agency. You can change what's going on there and have a say, having fun with others, people hanging out, encouraging you. One thing that we also looked at was, what were the biggest predictors in the sort of 240 people that we researched? What's the biggest predictor for their sort of well-being, positive well-being? And it was that they had friends that encouraged them to progress, and then just think about other parts of your life and where you've got people going, Tyson, you're a legend, mate. That was awesome, and it's just like BMX is sometimes just that place for so many people where people are cheering them on
For,
and they feel like a hero, even though they're not the best, but they're giving it a go and they're like being their best. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah, of course, yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I kind of want to go back to, and I think it touches on this, but like the whole trail salt thing,
Oh yeah.
and I think that it is something that happens right when you start to take ownership over it, and obviously there's maybe a sliding scale of, well, there's definitely a sliding scale of trail salt. Like there's very salty and there's not very salty, but I can totally, just having been around it for freaking 20 years or whatever, like it's something that is important to a degree, but what I see now, maybe just being older, is again, how do you encourage? What's the best way to encourage the next generation? Because just as a personal story, like I was 18 when I moved to Canberra, right? And I met Riss. He eventually, I was already building jumps back when I lived in Broadford. I lived in Victoria, in country Victoria. So I didn't have a skate park. That's what I actually built in an old BMX track. That's what I would do. Like not a proper BMX track, just one of those council like single lane things. And me and my friends, built jumps there. But when I moved to Canberra, Riss invited me to the trails that he had at the time called Hush, and it was very friendly of him to be able to do that, but there was a certain level of like, oh, I better not fuck up here. I was so nervous, you know what I mean? But I think that kind of hard-nosed stance that they had almost made me want to prove it to them that I belonged to help out, even though they'd already built a full set of trails. Like I wanted to do as much as I could. Well, they didn't build a full set of trails, but I'm getting at. Like I then started building, quite established.
Yeah.
And I think we're kind of actually grappling with that now because we are all a little bit older, and I think it's also a bit difficult, or it was a bit difficult for me, having owned Backbone, which is a public-facing thing, but then also being one of the dudes that's always building at the main set of trails in Canberra. You get this like, well, you have to be very diplomatic. You can't just be the dude that tells people to fuck off or whatever. Yeah. But what I'm getting at is I don't really know, and you don't have to have the perfect answer for it either, but I don't know the best way to approach that like olive branch, versus the vinegar of
yeah, and that's a good analogy. I was thinking like the salt shaker versus the salt gun, And,
yeah.
So
Two levels of salt.
Yeah, the salt shaker, I think, yeah, and it's a legit. Like I'll go back to, I guess, to unpack your anecdote. I think that sense of being an outsider. And someone who wants to be an insider, it's deeply vulnerable. You're saying to so here I am, like, please, I want to be one of you, pretty much. And it's that the respect that comes with that is obviously based on your understanding and appreciation of what they've had to do to do that, and that's why you're not a dry guy, because you took that seriously. If you didn't take that seriously, just walking, hey man, whatever, you didn't really care that much. You just think, oh, I don't have to care. I'm just come when I want and I'll do what I want, But you socially perceptive around what the expectations are in that context and in that culture. And those expectations are important because there are certain rules and boundaries that have to be put down, and that's ultimately what we're talking about is boundaries. And boundaries are important in life. You need to put down your boundaries to protect yourself, to protect others, whatever. Especially as a parent, we put in boundaries for our kids or whatever. There's all sorts of boundaries that we put in relationships. And talking about relationships, I'm writing we've almost finished it actually. Mike V from Lux, we've got an article that's going to come out. Not too sure when, but I think we're just putting the finishing touches on it. So it's talking about relationships in BMX. We don't necessarily go to dry guys, whatever, but it's just more broadly. But another side note, I am writing a book, which we do talk about dry guys. I'm writing a book with Boyd, Alexander Boyd. Shout out to Boyd, and also Liam Healy. We're sort of doing a bit of an illustrated trail guide, and some of it's going to be about the history of trails, and be interviewing a whole bunch of trail people. But then the really basics of it, talking about shovels, wheelbarrows, all that sort of stuff, and then sort of going beyond that, looking at other things, working with councils, dry guys. Flag said you got to put the playlist on there, the music playlist, because we just pump Credence and Barnsey all the time. Aussie Flag says, "What do you want?" I'm like, Aussie pub classics." He's like, "All right, sure, sure." But yeah, yeah, it's good times. But no, Credence is always and Home of the Brave. We put the props stuff on too.
Mm.
There's all sorts of stuff, and it's always a cheer when Start Me Up comes on or something. It's always good times. But yeah, look, I think the saltiness it's a response to protecting something you really care about from a perceived threat, and how you do that depends on a whole bunch of stuff. Some people just might take, like I said, the salt gun and just go get, whatever, get out of here. Um, Others a bit more diplomatic, and it just depends on a whole bunch of stuff. But, I think usually when you've built jumps, it's almost like, you get your visa to other jumps. People recognize your work, and you get an invitation, or you're allowed to go to a certain place because you've got that legitimacy and credibility based on this other work,
Hmm.
and so in my field it comes down to your papers and your writing and your words and all this, but in the trail world it comes down to have you built the jumps, do you jump, what can you do, sort of thing. It's not about your words, it's about what have you done and what can you do, sort of thing, and what are you still doing, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Because um, and yeah, and that's really interesting. And I was talking to some colleagues actually about going to June Jam, and I said I'm going to this place where a certain amount of riders go, and we'll ride, and it's almost like an academic conference where people go and they present their what they've been learning about their research and sharing, and people say stuff, and it's just sort of this fusing of ideas and basically a community sharing. Um, and creating this experience, and it's the same with a jam. Riders get together, and it's almost like a musical jam, but the sounds are there, but the embodiment of the creativity comes through the body. It's how to do certain things, and there's such a complexity in recognizing the different tricks, the style, what works, what's not, how clicked was it. There's all these little things that we all intuitively know, and um, we refer to whenever we're valuing these things. So when we look at the photos, there's always these certain things that are recognizable, um and it's that same level of detail and that sort of academic conference sense when they're looking and sort of analyzing certain things, but instead of it being bodies and bikes, it's sort of words, and but it's that same complexity, it's just in a different form. And again, if anyone out there has done this or know of it, I'd love to see a video of someone doing flatland with the bike sort of green screened out, and there's just someone on the sort of like hovering, and then looking at that compared to dance, like a ballet
Mm.
dancer, and like, the complexity of movement of a dancer is just phenomenal. But then imagine dancing with a bike, a mechanical thing. Like it's just so it's really interesting. And I listened to that podcast. with Nikita Dikuro, the Swiss BMX Olympian. She did with the physicists, Neil Tyson deGrasse and some of those other guys, and Neil Tyson deGrasse said, oh, he sort of didn't rate BMX much, but then when he watched it, he sort of lost a bit of respect for the Olympic runners because all they have to do is put one foot in front of the other. Whereas, like with the BMX, they're like spinning, and then there's like sometimes three axes of spinning, and then like and then yeah, getting back to like I was saying with my colleague, like if there's a mistake in my presentation in terms of like when I'm writing, when I'm doing a run, if that's a presentation, if there's a mistake, it's not me just saying a wrong word and then being a bit embarrassed. It's me potentially breaking my leg or
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like as a creative expression, it's high stakes,
for
and it's
sure.
just like how creative you want to get sort of makes it obviously more high stakes in some ways, but yeah, it's like it is really, when you get it wrong, it can hurt a lot, and it's yeah, such a and that's where that commitment, I think, really comes into it. But it's such what's the word, like a rich but in some ways normal thing. Like I'm saying, there's so many parallels to like all these other normal behaviors that we do, but we just don't see BMX necessarily being like that. And there isn't a rich analytical history of BMX. I know that
Mm.
sounds
No, but
academic.
I think that's what it. I mean, it's important to have these types of conversations and all the research you're doing because it's it doesn't normalize it, but it lets, like you said, Neil deGrasse Tyson all of a sudden can kind of understand the complexity and the difficulty and all of the
Mm,
things, the nuances of BMX because he sees it through this like physicist brain. And same goes with what you were saying about dancing or like even these conferences. You can relay that. I think the kind of X factor, because obviously there's a lot of similarities that you're talking about this between other avenues in life and BMX. But one of
mm,
the things that you touched on earlier that I'd like to speak about a little bit more is this idea of play
mm,
and how I personally think it's really important to everyday BMX riders. Obviously, that for the
yeah,
majority, I would imagine that's the thing that keeps people coming back. And also, at one point, in a BMX's lifetime or rider's lifetime, play play probably takes more precedent because you know I'm 38 in a couple of months. Maybe my level of progression that I searched for in my in my teens and through my 20s is starting to go down, whereas the enjoyment factor is
mm.
is continuing to rise. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on the importance of play and maybe as it relates to not just old riders, but especially um, old riders.
Yeah, no, totally. What you're talking jogged my memory about something in terms of BMX and what it gives you. And before I go to the play, I'll just tell you one
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
because I know you want to talk about this one. But I when I was in Malta, I was working. I was a movie extra. Okay, so
Oh, see.
and the movie was Agora. It was just this sort of period film, philosopher Hypatia. It was a common sense of philosopher. And, I studied philosophy, but there was a guy there, and I recognized him because he was my real estate agent when I first moved there. And this was a few years later. And I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" He was Aussie. I said, "Hey, what's going on, Steve?" He's like, "Oh, what are you doing? Hey, how you going? What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, nothing much. I'm just doing extra stuff." I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm a stunt coordinator." And I was like, "Stunt coordinator?" He's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh, do you need anyone?" He's like, "Yeah, we do." He's like, "Can you do stunts?" I was like, "Man, I ride BMX." Like, I'm like, "Yeah, I fall all the time. Like, I'm used to it, like I could do it." And he's like, "All right, sweet." And then so like I was a stuntman for like on this movie and just one of the junior ones, but I was getting into fights, falling, doing all this sort of stuff. And you support the older ones who catch on fire and jump fall big time and all this sort of stuff. And so, you know, I think with that, it just remind me of like with the with even getting to the play, you know, but BMX giving you sort of, well, how hard can it be mentality also? Like, oh, how hard can it be? I'm going to give this a go, you know, and I can do this, I can do that. And I think, and then, yeah, then that's when it led to other stuff like Game of Thrones. I think, you know, I
Did
think
you
we
got to
had.
tell the Game of Thrones story? Like, I need to know about that. That's pretty
Yeah.
classic.
So, all right, so basically, yeah, because when I was in Malta, I was studying and I needed money, and I had some mates who, friends through BMXs, you know, who were like casting people and stuff, and I've always had long hair, and you know, sometimes I have a beard or not, but there's a lot of films in Malta that get done, like Gladiator. Troy. I think there's like, you know, Maltese people sort of look a certain way, like myself. So they fit the profile of certain things, especially Game of Thrones. So basically, yeah, Game of Thrones. I think I worked on Game of Thrones for maybe 3 or 4 months. Pretty much it was like Monday to Friday filming, and I ended up in a few scenes like the Dothraki wedding. I was the guy who picked up the gifts and I showed them the gifts and then sort of sit down. And if you watch it, you sort of see me trip over a little bit. But I'm also there when the dude gets his throat cut out. And it's a season one, you know, and I'm standing there. And coincidentally, like my brother was flying to Sydney and he called me up. And he's like, dude, you're never gonna guess what. I'm like, what? He's like, you're in Rolling Stone. I'm like, you serious? He's like, yeah, I bought this magazine in Melbourne. I was reading it on the airplane, and then saw me there and got to Sydney. He called me. He's like a DVD preview, and it just happened to be the shot where we were in that sort of temple where the dude's getting cut out, and I'm standing there with this big weapon, and so yeah, it's just pretty random, like, but. It's like, yeah, the BMX stuff, and you know, I also when I was in Malta, I used to build like stages for like these reggae parties, and was a
Uh,
handyman, and just you know, just doing stuff like BMX, playing around, giving it a go, trial and error, like that's what we do, and it's just keep
mm,
on going, and you're finding that limit, and you know, we. In education, we've got this term called scaffolding. And so what happens is there was this theorist, Bruner, who came up with scaffolding, but educational psychologist. But um, originally, it's a guy called Vygotsky, and he's got this socio-cultural theory of learning. So we learn within a culture, and so we learn from others, more knowledgeable others, you know. And so what happens is you've got an individual here, and they've basically have got something. It's called their um, let's say we'll call it a current knowledge. We won't get technical, their current knowledge. Okay. And this is where we want them to be. But then how are they going to get here? And the technical term is zone of proximal development. Okay. And so how do you go from the zone of actual development to zone of proximal development to get them up to here? And often there is a more knowledgeable other who that's the teacher in a school setting where they're like, Johnny, do this or that. And, you know, they try to bridge that gap, you know. But with BMX, you know, you're sitting down, you're watching a movie of, I don't know, like I said, you're watching Ground Chuck, you know, and like, all right, I want to go try and do that. So you're watching them, and then you think to myself, well, how am I going to go do that, you know? And so you've got an idea of where you want to go. You're here. What do I need to do to get this? And then you start to break it down. All right, I've got to get my bars here. I've got to get my knees over. There's all these different bits. And slowly, what you're doing is you're filling the spot of that more knowledgeable other with yourself, and you're sort of like self-scaffolding. You know, you're taking yourself up bit by bit, trial and error, and you keep on building on that. And it becomes, for a BMX, really intuitive to sort of do that. And some people do it much better than others, you know, and it's, but that's all play. It's like just you're trying to get there, you don't know how, I'll do this, I'll do that, oh shit, I'll do this. You know, I think I was trying to do no foot cans for so many years, kicking my feet to the left. And then like first time to the right, I was like, fuck, I did it. I was like, damn it. Like, why did I try to the right? Like, why is that, you know? And so is it all that sort of stuff sometimes when you just like it's not working, I'll try it. And yeah, like when you're younger, you want to progress and sort of get bigger. And you know, again, it's really interesting the research that the focus groups, yeah, that we were talking about. this sort of thing with the riders. What barriers are there to BMX? Why do people stop riding and stuff? And often they would say their mates had stopped because, like I said, with injury and work and stuff, but also because they felt they weren't good enough or they didn't get a sponsor. And, there was like this sort of valuing themselves from this sort of other sort of way and not valuing necessarily that play and just having a good time. And um, yeah, and I think as you get older, you start to sort of value it in that way. And again, that Wade Nelson, the Dr. Wade Nelson, he talks about that also, and even his relationship with safety gear and how that changes. Like when I ride, I wear my helmet, I've got knee pads, and now I've even got these hip pads, which are so good. And like just having the hip pads, I'm thinking about trying 360s again. I'm not sure if
Mm.
I'm thinking about it, but it's just like and his reasoning is that he loves BMX so much that he does everything he can to protect himself so he can ride more, which is very logical. And so you know in my 20s, sometimes I just have shorts and a helmet on, and it's just the helmet's compulsory now because I smashed my face. I think I'd posted it once, but I pretty much smashed it into concrete, and it was like concussion, and so yeah, just a helmet now, and got to protect my brain because that's what I use every day, for work, etc. But it's interesting, like then to see that the sort of the tension between the play, um, safety, the progression, and taking that risk. And I really remember clearly in those years when I wasn't riding to my fullest, like, I go to do an air and stuff, and it's like I don't know, it's like having a rev limiter on a Ferrari where you just want to put the foot in and just go for it, and but it was so yeah, it was sometimes I felt I might as well not ride. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's what happens to also a lot of pros. Like, and I think there's been a lot of commentary from different people around that. Like, not to say that I was necessarily pro, but it's like just to that level that you want to do it to. Do you
Mm.
know? Like, I'd imagine it'd probably be like running or something like this. If you want to run so fast and you can't, you just think, well, I'm not going to. And as you get older, finding the joy in that play and just even trying to maybe relearn stuff, but being selective about what it is. And I think, um, yeah, just having a like finding what it is that you want to get out of it, like in terms of if it is sort of learning the tricks or even little combos, like manuals, doing these sorts of things. I think writing definitely changes in terms of what you want to do, and even making edits. Like in Malta, we used to make like so many edits and always producing stuff, and it was so much fun and such a driver too for like people to progress and to do things, and to push that what you could personally do. But then yeah, as you get older, like there's all these other tensions that you're trying to I guess balance between but you know it is so, and I was talking to my partner about this. I think it's just it's such a hard thing to get to happen organic like artificially,
Mm.
like to get a group of people together and to own it, like you're saying with Stromolo, how it can be quite difficult then to get people to take a buy-in and then sort of people coming to do that. But I think also there'll be over time people seeing it as an accessible place. Like I think it'd be awesome if there was another set of jumps that were just in between the two, just to make them so you can go every day and just still get that slightly bigger jump buzz. But do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And maybe that's then the project that people do. Then they sort of get the dirt there, and that's a community-led project. I'm not sure, but it's like, and shout out to Riss, he's working up there. That's awesome too. How good! Like, great transition.
Mm.
Um, but it is like the play thing is just so important, and especially when and this is one thing I love about BMX, you get the intergenerational groups hanging out. It's not like, you know, just people are riding, everyone's riding together. It's not like there's just the young kids with the older kids. If there's a session going on, people get into it, and um, yeah, and even just sort of getting back to trail salt and a whole bunch of other stuff like this, like with neurodiversity and even just people, young people, so many of us didn't have social skills like growing up, or like, like people just, yeah, there's so much I think um that can be sort of, reflected on and go, well, there's bits that weren't good, but like what can we take out of that, and trying to understand like how we can leverage that to help young people, but even older people, like, guys my age in their 30s, 40s is so lonely. Like
Mm,
loneliness is such a big thing, and mental health. I know we haven't even spoken about mental health really, and like mental health in and outside of BMX is a problem for a whole bunch of different reasons. But, even our researchers showed though, BMXers, especially freestyle BMXers, were the highest peer connected. Like they really felt like they had a sense of connection with their mates, and such a really important thing. And in light of that sort of loneliness stuff, but
for sure.
and suicide is a big one, like um from Mira to Winkleman, and a whole bunch of other riders. Everyone knows riders that have, taken their own life, and it's just yeah, it's really
Yeah,
sad
for sure.
because it has such an impact.
That's right. Yeah, it's interesting that you said that about it's the peer connectedness with mental health, because that's something that I'm going through at the moment. Having moved up here is like, there's no, like, I've met a few of the crew at the local skate park, which has been really sick. But
Mm.
I've been so used to a particular way of doing things, especially with BMX, for so long, and now for the most part I'm doing it by myself, especially with the whole trail building. Like, I'm starting a new spot,
Mm.
which is just where I'm living, and it'll just be me building, like,
For now.
but for now. And I think it was a real, yeah, that's a real shock, um, so I think it's definitely with the whole with the whole trail salt thing, and um, just that connectedness to a group. I think that the biggest thing that actually my friend Rain Turnbull, so shout out to Rain, he said this, and it's really stuck with me, is the most important thing is to realize that you are there because you want to build the stuff for yourself to ride,
Hmm.
and that if someone's not digging to the level that you are, well, that's okay, and it shouldn't be their responsibility to fulfill your happiness, because you are the one that's trying to fulfill your own happiness. Obviously, I'm taking his words. His words were just that,
Like,
you're building it for yourself.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that you are building it for your friends. Like, I think that it's a great feeling to. There's no better feeling in trails, right, than having a session with your
yeah,
mates.
yeah.
But what I'm holding on to, just in my personal experience, is the feeling of riding trails is what I want to do the most. Like, and that's lately the place that I feel most happy is when I haven't even, I haven't ridden these jumps, and it's going to be a while until I do. But yeah, it's that feeling of seeing the future, like, and seeing the
Hmm.
future in a positive light. And that's where I think that, to go back to the play idea, is, and just really showcasing the importance of enjoyment out of BMX as your progression declines. The enjoyment is the thing that you should probably try to hold on to, in that feeling of play. It's like,
Hmm.
I can still see progression because there's no limit to the amount of jumps that I can potentially build,
Yeah,
whereas like maybe my riding progression might go down, but there's future in building jumps, whereas
yeah.
um, when when I go to the skate park, I might just be reminded of the things that I used to be able to do that I couldn't, that I can't
Yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah. And look, it's skate park, the concrete's hard. Oh, who wants to ride on that, you know? Like, I know. And it's like that, the thing with age is the wisdom, but then there's other things that you lose, and I guess yeah, it's all part of it, and I think Rain is right, and sort of what I was talking about earlier with that authenticity, I think what he's saying is just, you build it for yourself, and you're gonna have those trails, and that's what you've built, and other guys can't necessarily just say, oh yeah, I've helped here or there, but they're not like in the same way what you've done, and I think that is you know, what you build there is an extension of obviously you as a rider, and there's and again, Wade Nelson, he makes reference to it. Trail builders, they have a sort of a set of legitimacy that comes with it. Doesn't matter how good you are, but if you're good with a shovel, there's a different type of respect that sort of comes with that, And I think um, then, yeah, the play comes through the shovel, comes through the riding, and doing what you're doing in a slightly different way, experimenting something different, But that yeah, yeah. If you build it, I think they will come in some ways. I'm sure. And then that's where the frustrations come because start to think about that, and where I was leading to is like that. Building a set of jumps is like preparing a banquet, and depending on how much you've put into that, you want a certain amount back from the people who eat with you, whether it's a thanks or maybe they help you clean up or there's something. Do you know what I mean? And again, I think Jay Ham in his sort of podcast said, he understands that some people can't, they're traveling through, they're struggling, whatever. But that appreciation and respect, it's just like, well, you've come to my house to eat. There were sort of manners, respect, and then, it's okay to have them. It was worth cooking. You didn't mind slaving all day and all this sort of thing. But then if everyone just keeps coming all the time and eating food, you're like, mate,
Yeah.
like, I've paid for this food and I've actually got a family that sort of my kids miss me, or like sometimes I'm digging in the rain, going I could be at home with the kids, but I'm here, and it's just like, and so those are the moments it's hard not to get salty when you
Mm.
just because and I do try to take the kids down as much as I can. It's great, and my daughter for her school project she did like a whole story on dry guys because we had someone come down and it was a bit of an interesting story, but I got called a trail Nazi, which was quite interesting. But someone tried to 180 on a lip, and they rode over
Sure.
my
Yeah.
shovel and everything, like my
Far out.
shovel. I was just like, dude. So anyway, so Ren, she's gone to school and wrote a story about dry guys, and the teacher's like, "What's a dry guy?" She's explained it.
Oh, that's so funny.
So yeah, so she's great anyway. But funny actually, Ren, like there was a mountain biking thing at the school over here, and I said, "What do you want to do? Go to trails or go to this mountain biking comp?" She's like, "I want to go to trails, Dad." I was like, "All right, good.
Mm.
Let's hope this continues." But yeah,
For
I'm
sure.
gonna go down. We're gonna go do some digging today. But yeah, it's I think there's always going to be I think um the yeah, people we're so social, and there's almost like a social contract where if I'm giving you something you've got to give me something. Like it just can't be always one way, and like there's altruism which is really important where yeah you're giving without necessarily expecting back, but then I think when you're digging and working so hard there's a certain amount where you want something back, and I think that's different for different people. Different trail bosses have got different ideas of what needs to sort
That's
of,
right.
and it's just like a visa into a country. Like I said, some countries have got $10 visa, some countries like 2,000, and you need to do shots, and there's all these sort of entry sort of things that you need to sort of come in, and like you see some dudes posting, like no knobby tires, stuff like that. There's all these particular things that you need to be able to do to come into a spot, and I think, if you're putting that work, then yeah, you get to decide pretty much. It's like the public land, the unauthorized land is an interesting one. And in Australia, all of the land is stolen anyway. So it's just like, who stole it from who, sort of. Does that make sense? So I
Mm.
think it's such an interesting context, like a philosophical just mess to think about that then, like in Australian context, and England and America, different. America, obviously, another sort of invaded place, but it's really interesting, like that relationship to the land with the trails is that other extra layer, and there isn't. It's such a frontier, and it has been such a frontier for such a long time, and it's been such a misunderstood problem by councils, and there hasn't been necessarily the just the processes that have helped it to thrive, and that's why it hasn't necessarily thrived in the public, but it's gone underground, and and like we said, there's that marginalization and all of that sort of stuff. So for me, it's about giving local kids an entry point into something. And then maybe sometimes the big dogs go to those little jumps, those smaller jumps, see these kids and go, "Hey, do you want to come to our jumps?" And
Mm.
wait, and then they're digging. And so, but it's just like if there's nowhere to go, they're just going to go to mountain biking places or to other places, and mountain biking, is fine, but it's different in the sense that that social cohesion, you don't get it in the same way because you're following someone, you're riding. Like dirt jumping is concentrated, social, physical. It's there, it's really different. Like I said, the strongest predictor for us with the well-being, we found that it was you have friends that encourage you. And, and then think about a jam, like, all you've got is people encouraging you and you're going off and you're giving it your best, and then they're going off for you. And so it's
Mm.
such um, it's such a great feeling in that way, and I just imagine it, like if you imagine a footy day when it's footy time, and then for everyone from the under 12s, everyone, like had Prez and all these young guys riding at Stromlo last year. It's like they're doing laps with the AFL big guys and everyone's cheering them on, like
Yeah.
that doesn't happen. Do you
No,
know what
that
I mean?
doesn't happen. That's one of the biggest reasons why I do that
Yeah.
jam, and also because of I think just trails brings that as well. It's sick. With
Yeah.
the whole land use thing, I most of the time just speak from my own experiences, but it's interesting that you said that about stolen land and stuff like that. I'm not going to get too far into that because it's not something that I know too much about. But even just from the perspective of the trail, we built some trails in Belconnen called LOD. It was myself, Danny, Stevenson, Will Gunn, Arthur. We built like another spot while Snails was going. I actually started it with the boys just because I had my son and I was just struggling to find time to
Mm.
get out, and it was just down the road from my house. But anyway, so these trails came under threat by the government, and they put a notice up saying that trails are going to get demolished. There's also all this there's a notice to remediate, which means, for the people that don't know what that means, it's just to fix all the things that you had done. And I actually looked up the zoning for this place where we built jumps, and it was urban mixed use public land. And I just thought that was such an interesting thing to see because it's public land. The government actually works for the people. It doesn't, we don't serve the government serves us, type thing.
Yeah.
And yet here they are dictating to me what the appropriate use for public use land is. I just thought that was a really interesting
Mm.
perspective, and something that when I think about trails these days on public land, that you know, especially since that post I did on Instagram with Snake Woods, which isn't
Mm.
actually on public land, it's on private land.
Yeah.
But you know, it's very quickly said that it's public land, like, oh, things can go because it's on public land, but it's like, well, who dictates
Hmm.
what public land is used for? And
Yeah.
the government's response was that, well, you have to then consult with the public about your use of this land. And I think that's fair enough. You know, I was never given the opportunity to discuss with the public about the land use and whether or not that it was favourable or not favourable. And that, I just think that that's a really interesting point that maybe a lot of people potentially need to like keep in their minds when the council or whoever it is approaches them about the use of the land. It's
Hmm.
just the fact that, well, allow me to consult with the public in the area to see
Mm.
whether this is appropriate public use of the land.
Yeah, and mixed use public land, and it's such an interesting one with they then consulting the public, because who is the public and how much
That's
of the public do you need to consult with, and that sort of thing. And you know, if there's not any specific, I think, sensitivities or around that land, like it's not there's artifacts or anything like this, and I think digging in somewhere like that is you know again, like because of that, the lack of other spaces, we sort of go to this space, but then they're not necessarily even being education around how to and what can be done in these spaces. Like there's a lot of stuff that we don't know about, and it's not like it's like you said, they expect you to go consult the public. Well, it's like, well, what for? Usually with with BMX, you find that place, you do it, and then that's it. You get it done, because everything else is too complicated, it takes too long, and I could be riding, or I could be digging, and so and this is I think it's a common thing, with BMXs, but in that, like, mitigating, there's always going to be, and I guess this is what you realize as a younger BMXer, is like, you know, other people do other stuff on public land. Why can't I? Like,
mm,
rowing clubs, people build golf clubs, people build all sorts of stuff on sensitive land near the Yarra River, but then some kids build little jumps, and then it's, really problematic. It come down and, demolish stuff, and you know what I mean? So it's like, even with our jumps of Blackwards, there's always going to be a negative environmental impact in some way at the start. It's like a construction site. But then it's like, well, then how do we work with what we've got then to make it, I guess, to reverse that negative impact? And, there's always going to be some sort of environmental disturbance, and that's part of digging, just like if they're building a walking track or whatever it is, and so it's accepting that there's going to be some level of change in that environment, but it's like, well, how do we lessen that damage, and then what are the positives that are going to come out of it, and then that's where we're trying to do the research to show
mm,
there's all these other positives, that are in there. And some councils down in Frankston, they did a program with young people where they got people to, because the kids were going out building jumps everywhere, and so there was a person there within the council who worked with young people to find a spot. They got some people from land care to teach them about different plants. They got someone to teach them how to use shovels and tools. Like, it was a council's way of doing it, but it was better than just demolishing the jumps, which,
mm,
it's really good. And so then they've got someone who goes to check out the jumps every 2 weeks, because one of the things with liability, I couldn't find any precedents. And again, if anyone's listening and they know of one, where someone sued the council because of dirt jumps, I couldn't find. I searched through different legal cases. I found one at a BMX track where someone had modified the lip, and then someone fell, and then the council was blamed because they knew that the lip had been modified. And I also found one where someone sued the council because of graffiti, and then this is why they spray that other graffiti stuff on it because of it seems like this case, um,
Hmm.
which makes it even slipperier, which is ridiculous. Um, so, but yeah, and I found one where someone sued a BMX track because they went down the start hill and it was like the pro start hill and they fell, and they should have been a gate or something. But I haven't found any legal precedents for a council being sued because of dirt jumps.
Oh wow.
So, but yeah, so I don't know, but I'm not a lawyer. But yeah, it's a really, I think, an interesting one there. I think with the perception of risk and um, things being demolished. And I know we sort of talked about this a sort of bit earlier, but you know, and I mentioned the golf or whatever, but I just think, even sometimes just a mountain bike going down one of those slopes on a mountain bike is so much more dangerous than jumping a jump, because like when you hit a rock on a mountain bike and you go over, there's nothing like you can do. It's just like hoping that you land in the right place, but with the jumps, you take rocks out, we cut the tree, like you curate the area so it's like that. It's almost like unnecessary risk is sort of in some sense removed, and
Mm.
like it's just and things are so smooth, like it's really predictable and it's the same thing every time. Like whereas with like going down a mountain bike, going down this sort of um some of these parts, it's just like it's epic. Like there could have been something since the last time you went down
Yeah.
that had changed, and there's a lot of unknowns, and like I said, especially with the speed and coming down a hill, like if you go over, you just keep on falling, and there's nothing that's going to stop you until you hit the ground or whatever. So I think for me that's riskier than hitting a set of dirt jumps,
Oh,
and
for sure.
even councils realizing that just because a dirt jump is high doesn't make it dangerous, and it's the worst when they build pump tracks when it's like, half a meter high tabletop that's like just, I don't know, a meter long, and it's just like all the kids are landing flat because it's bloody too short, or the
Yeah.
transition bucks up. It's like make them a bit bigger and a bigger platform so they've got sort of space. And I'm building a pump track in a school at the moment in Gisborne, with a bunch of kids,
Oh
and
wow.
been really fun. Yeah, the principal had dirt there, and I'm trying to do other stuff like that in some schools, just local stuff. But you need teachers to care and this sort of thing, and yeah. So hopefully that will be something that we can do a bit more of. And funnily enough, I was digging with one of the kids who doesn't even ride. And I said, "Do you like digging?" And he said, "Yeah, I do. I go out in the backyard and just dig holes for no reason." And I was just like, "Oh, well, I dig holes too." I said, "I do jump the jumps, but I get it. Like digging holes it's really nice." And funnily enough, like when I wasn't digging a trails in those years, I was building a backyard, and I've got a whole sort of I don't even know how to explain it, but rainwater garden, and I've got a running creek in the sort of for my gutters and all this sort of stuff. But just being out there in the shovel in the rain digging, it was so good, and it's just really interesting, the shovel and having that relationship with the shovel. And we got some from you guys up there, and Flags did a nice he engraved my name on my shovel, which
Oh,
was love.
sick.
Yeah, yeah, it's got Doc Choc on it, but
Awesome.
you know it's so good. And the shovel, and that's where that paper was, that sort of the possibilities with the shovel, because there's so much that you can do um with the shovel. And
Mm.
like just it with the whole banquet stuff or whatever, but it becomes, whatever you build becomes a platform then for others to then manifest whatever they've been dreaming about, whether it's like, oh, fuck, I'm gonna get a 360 look back or whatever. But they haven't found the right jump, but then they've just found your one, and you're like, man, this is perfect to do that or do that. Do you know what I mean? And it's like that sense of joy that comes, like you become such an enabler when you build trails, because you're enabling other people to um, do something great. But then there's a power that comes with that, and you become a gatekeeper, and there's a responsibility. And it's like, you don't want people to come who aren't legitimate. You want people
Mm.
to come, and even just like dudes who can't maybe jump the jumps, you don't want them to get hurt, or you don't have to deal with dudes who just come and they're going to get hurt. And then it's like, your jumps are going to get dosed. Do you know what I mean? It's just like it's so complicated. So I think, the saltiness, it's a natural part of it, of being, I think, protective, and trying to keep something that's really special. But it's like you said, it's how you do it, which I think really matters. And yeah, it's such a big topic with it, and then with the creativity and with the mental health, and and then being insular, and then what can happen within trail culture. And your Remy Morton podcast was pretty awesome, and it's so interesting to hear him talk about BMX and the mountain bike overlap, which I thought was really awesome.
Mm. Yeah, he definitely had some different things to. It was interesting to hear that there's a bit of a disconnect between what is typically BMX doesn't really transfer over to mountain biking. It's only just the the riding aspect. But Remy, I feel like, and someone like Tom Mallet as well, is really trying to bring that builder culture into mountain biking. I
Mm,
actually wanted to. You were talking about going to the trails,
mm,
so I won't keep you too much longer. But I just wanted to know what your process is like at Blackwoods in terms of um, just the way that you guys organise digging and things like that. Because one of the things that I've spoken about with Russell a little bit is we went through a real period of time where it felt like we were just perpetually digging and not really riding, and then we would maybe have one session after like 5 months, and then go straight back to digging again. And we were sort of saying about how, and I'm very sure that I'm gonna maybe annoy some people in the UK and the US that have shitty weather, but it almost seems like they take so much. They take advantage of when it's good weather. They know that they're digging all winter and it sucks. But if we can just make it to, spring, summer, autumn, then we're just going to ride, and we're riding and riding and riding, and then that's a job for winter. They're obviously going to patch some stuff or whatever, but it's almost like this thing where you just dig all year round because the weather is good in Australia for the most part, but then at the same time you almost forget that the goal is to ride your bike, especially as you get older. And
yeah.
I'm not saying right or wrong. I was just more commenting on it, but I was wondering what your process is at Blackwoods, because it sounds like you guys have got a crew. And
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Like where they are, it's different climate to where I am. Like it's beautiful up here, blue skies and stuff, and over there it's bloody 13 and cloudy. Like it's quite wet and dark, and so we're not going to be riding for at least another couple of weeks. I think maybe 2, 3 weeks, and we've built a whole new pump line, and Flags was pretty much on a sort of mini digger last year because it rained so much through November, December. We just exploited the rain and dug. We just moved so much dirt, and then we've just been shaping, and we've had to still with shovel now move a few berms here or there because we've got a whole berm run. We call it Cool Runnings. And it's just like just pumps and berm tracks, like Bermageddon, from Boyd. That's our sort of our joke there. And so, and we built a smaller run, just a few jumps, a bit of fun into like a right hand hip. And we haven't tried, it's all wet and it's so clayey there. But if you get the moisture right, you could build it and ride it like the same day.
oh
It's
wow,
amazing. And then yeah, we've been digging pretty hard this winter. There's a core crew, and then people come in and out, and some people have got kids, some people are studying. Well, yeah, there's all sorts of stuff that people deal with, get sick, all this sort of thing. But yeah, we just sort of I try to get out there at least once a week, maybe twice a week if I'm lucky. I'm only working 4 days this semester, so until the end of the year. In some parts, so I could go dig an extra day, and then but still have time to do other stuff at home and do all that sort of thing. But you know, it. it gets really dry and hard there in summer. So we can only dig if there's been big rains, and we are trying to get as much stuff as we can done in the next few weeks, and then hopefully not dig so much. Um, but and we also want to build a smaller line so we don't have to go to so much effort if it's just one or two people, to untarp it all, and we can warm up on stuff and all this sort of stuff. So we did a lot of digging through sort of November, December last year. But then yeah, since June, actually a bit earlier, we've been digging pretty solidly, trying to get it done. And yeah, you don't ride, and especially as you get older, yeah, it gets hard because you go, oh shit, I haven't ridden so long. Am I going to be okay to ride them when they sort of get cracking again? And then, but it was good, there was wheels jam, which was really nice and felt really good about it. But yeah, I'm hoping the next couple of weeks we'll get them going, and like I've rebuilt the lip. Hopefully we've rebuilt and fixed what we've needed to do. But it's so funny, when you've got a stuffed lip in the middle of summer, it's like, if we rebuild it, then we're not going to be able to ride it for, how many days. And you're always really sort of cautious what you take on, especially if you're trying to dig out some imperfection in it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, we've got good clay, but then we get sort of bad soil here or there. But yeah, I'm hoping that this summer is going to be riding more than sort of digging. We've also got a limited footprint in what we can do there. Like the owner, he's pretty awesome, but we've got a footprint that we've got to stay within. And so then the next things that we're going to be doing is just linking up sort of different things. So,
Cool.
building lips into other things and hips. And we hope to be able to cross between the three lines, which we can pretty much do. So, if you're following someone one way, you can just sort of cut off and then get them out in some other way, and
Yeah, that's
um,
sick.
yeah, have a bit of fun. And so yeah, but it's always evolving, and we build everything, but then we probably build some things up a bit more or
Yeah,
bigger.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
There's always that. It's just, I feel like you never build trails big enough. Like you always like, shit, I should have just built them a bit bigger, or
Yeah,
and it was funny because me and Erms, when we used to build, we're like, oh, who's gonna go first? And we're like, oh, you go, all right, all right. And then you go and you over jump it because you thought you were not gonna make it, and then you're like, don't go so quick. And then he goes, and then he does the same thing, and you're like, dude, we've got to go slower, And it's just like, even like I was saying before with that, how hard can it be mentality and sort of jumping into stuff, and like trails, you've built something that no one else has done, and someone now has to test it, and it's just like, well, who's going to do it, And then
mm,
it's just, that is like just really creative in just a new way, and creativity. There's a sort of whole framework where it's sort of you can have multiple levels of creativity, from like they call it mini creativity to little creativity. Then you have professional creativity, and then sort of more eminent or prominent creativity, like a big creativity they call it. And professional BMXers will be at that pro creativity level, and then you've got the guys who are just up there who are doing stuff which is phenomenal. They're changing BMX or whatever the reason, the paradigm of it. But everyday creativity that happens like this is just, that's the play stuff that we were talking about earlier, where, going out, trying it, you haven't done it before, no one's done it, you're just mucking around basically and
mm,
pushing your limit, seeing what you can do, and then knowing what you can do. And I think knowing what you can do is such an important thing, like some sense called self-efficacy, how, you see yourself as someone who can achieve certain things, how efficacious, how effective can you be, basically. But it's just jumping and riding, that stuff is so enabling for that, because you have a really clear idea of what you can do and what you can't do,
hmm
and with racing, it's not in relation to other people. It's in so in racing, it's in relation to other people. In freestyle, it's to yourself, and the competitive nature. Like I know we haven't even spoken about, any of that stuff, but it changes it so much, for different people. And through those years, and sort of getting back into BMX. I was, th 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I went in the state titles, big state titles at Bendigo track, and I was doing it on my Fit Inman, and I was racing, with my gearing is 30 on the front, 9 on the back, so I'm cranking out of the gate, and then trying to catch up, and it was really fun, and I was relatively competitive. I think I qualified third for the finals, but in the quarters I slipped my pedal. But it was so much fun sort of doing that. But then I was there for the whole day and I rode for 2 minutes. And I was just like, what the hell? Like it just wasn't fun. But that waiting in that way, but it was fun in the sense of riding. And this dude's old school guy, Trevor Webber. I don't know if you know Trevor Webber, but
No.
he's an old school race bike. And one of the best memories I've got was seeing him on a General Lee at Laylaw BMX track going over the doubles and just doing a tabletop. And it was a tabletop, and I was 16. And I just thought, that is, I just want to be like that when I'm older. And I think he was probably in his late 20s, but I thought he was so old, But after state titles one race, like I finished and he came up to me and he's like, dude, man, the smile on your face when you finished that race, like it was the best. And I was just like, it was fun to ride, but it was just like not enough riding. Does that make
Mm,
sense? Like you
yeah, yeah.
just want to ride and do it, and but yeah, but it's so interesting, like all of the fees, like there's so many hurdles to like racing and so many barriers, and um yeah, it's really interesting that racing, sort of getting back into racing because I started racing and I did for 2 3 years, and yeah, yeah, it was like the racing part was just, it reminded me of why I went to trails when I was young. And it was just, the rules, you have to ride at this time, there's so many
Yeah,
different
there's
things.
there's so many barriers to it, but yet it's incredibly popular. But having said that, it's incredibly popular as a sport that
Mm.
these days I think parents take their kids there because they're like maybe they
Rematch.
see kids enjoying BMX and then they're like, oh well, there's this regulated, it's always happening sport,
Totally.
and then
Mhm.
kids drop out of it once they're like, oh, this is not fun anymore. Um,
Yeah.
and I just think that
Because-
it's one of those things. Riss and I talk about it all the time. A lot of BMXers ride mountain bikes as like their auxiliary BMX, as their auxiliary riding, and it's like, man, why don't you go and dig trails or ride freestyle? It's like, one, it's going to be way better for your skills on the track, and two, there's like, it's just way way more fun. Like it's it's taking all of the things that you probably like about BMX racing and then applying it over here.
Exactly, and that's how we used to train. Is like going through our trails, and that's how it all was. Like Todd Lyons was like one of my heroes back in the day, and like it's funny. Like with the racing, and it gets really serious and it gets really costly. There's a big commitment. You need your family to do it, and I didn't have family who my brother used to take me. My parents didn't support BMX. They didn't think it was necessarily something. Maltese migrants, they're more interested in education, surviving, and all this sort of stuff. So I've managed to do both. So she's pretty happy anyway. But it's such a family thing. Like you need that buy-in, and it's around that performance, But then there's that constant valuing of how good you are based on other people, and sometimes the comparison might not be fair because you might not be riding as long, or you haven't had as much practice. There's all these sort of things, but you're still going to value yourself in that way. Well, I'm last, doesn't matter. I'm just
Mm.
I'm and so it is. I think, yeah, it changes as you get older. I think also if you make it through those years where it's just great to have a roll around and have fun. And we interviewed some people who were in their 40s and they were racing BMX and they only started maybe a few years ago, and they were telling us about how good it was even as a somebody in their late 40s just to roll around and have fun. and just to be there. But it is like it's quite a what's the word? It requires a lot of investment,
For sure.
time, care, and that sort of thing. But I think it can be really rich for families. Yeah, definitely. So,
Mm,
now racing is fun. Like even the pump track stuff, I think it's pretty cool how they do that pump track um, competitions and all this sort of stuff. I think any stuff like that is better than people not doing stuff, and people getting out and having fun, I reckon is the way to go, especially young people,
for sure.
getting and getting active and knowing their body and like being able to move it and being confident moving it. I think these are big things,
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
and school being more about that, not just kids sitting there learning stuff like through words and stuff, kids getting out into the world, doing things, and yeah, BMX as an educational tool, like, the Lighthouse guys doing great work over there, South Australia. Like, there's potential for this, but there hasn't been necessarily the what's the word? Especially I think with academia, which is quite interesting because I've made contact with three or four people now, and we're working on a few different projects, and we'll be publishing much more, sort of coming out. But there hasn't been that generation of sort of people to go through necessarily formalized education or people training in social work to go in that way. And skateboarding has done a really good job with this. I think
mm,
skateboarding has really managed to integrate itself into how sports get done. And, like there was even Victorian government sort of thing on skateboarding and, inclusiveness. And yeah, there's a lot of potential for BMX, but and I don't know if it was maybe you and Crandall had spoken about the difference between the BMX industry and then the people sort of BMX riding, and just like the stoke is always going to be there, but it's in whether or not the industry, how big it's going to be, which is I think is a really different thing. And I'm interested in the stoke. I'm not interested in necessarily the industry, but when there's the good industry, it also pumps into the stoke. It feeds off each other.
mm. Yeah, I think that the big thing is that it's not that the industry has to get exponentially bigger to
No.
increase the stoke, but I think that there is ability for the right in people in the industry to help facilitate like a really good amount of growth of stoke. Like for example, like you can debate like about whether Olympics is an important part of BMX from an industry standpoint. I don't like because it is an industry, BMX, like the Olympics is an industry endeavor. It's a business, but I don't know if it's going to change the world, but it might do. But if you can create something that is sort of akin to the Olympics, but really has BMX as the front and center thing, then that's the type of industry move that will then create, better avenues for BMX and more ability for BMX to get bigger.
Mhm.
One last thing I wanted to talk about because it was the one thing that we spent ages before we even finished before we even hit record.
Yeah.
I was looking for the quote. So in the research paper that you did, you had a quote from O'Keefe, and he says suggested that dirt jumps can be interpreted as an expression of power and control over place in an
Mm.
environment where young people have been systematically disempowered. And I just thought that was really powerful because in this day and age, it does seem like there's a lot of disempowerment of young people, and I just love the fact that you recognise through your research that it was a source of empowerment. And I just wanted you to touch onto that on that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, and it talks about what we were talking about before with that sense of agency, yeah, and being empowered. And we've all ridden our bikes in public spaces, and someone's come up to us and said, "Hey, don't ride here, get out of here, this and that," And usually it starts when you're a teenager. And, adults get worried. If you go to a park with your kids and there's a bunch of teenagers hanging around the park, what do you get a bit worried or you're a bit like, whatever? Do you know what I mean? Like, you, there, then some people get really worried about that, might complain, call the police. There's sort of different scales, but that's that sort of, like I was saying before, the adult hegemony of public space. Like kids are told what they can and can't do in public spaces, and then they find other places. And one thing that also, yeah, when we were talking about earlier, and I was linking that sort of thing to bike life and that bike life movement as a transient group of young people who, have I think almost gone beyond an extended street riding. Like this is like street riding around the street in that sort of sense. And it was funny. I think maybe Fudger in the Wall Man, one of their podcasts, they talked about maybe some bike life stuff. But I think they all went out on a ride together. And like the bike life people just wanted to keep on riding, but then like the BMX street dudes wanted to stay at a spot and go to
Mm.
spots, and it's like a way of really different interaction. But I think that bike life culture is a response to basically young people being told what to do all the time in spaces. And now they're getting around, hiding in many cases and basically being transient. So they're not in one spot, and it's just getting about. And it's just the difference between BMX and spot street hunting is, you ride around, but you just go to a spot and then sort of use it and then, you move around. So it's just that sort of slight difference. But again, with that, it's you're reinterpreting I guess what is meant to be done in a certain place, and those reinterpretations can get you into trouble by authorities for different reasons, be it digging or because you're grinding down some rail and you've left a mark there and they say that's damage or vandalism, or do you know what I mean? You've wall ridden a wall, you got a tire mark on it, you've damaged their property. And well, yes, a damaged property, but that's also a great photo, and I might be famous now. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just like there's that sort of whose perspective matters more, and
Hmm.
that's a whole complicated sort of thing. But there's someone, an academic, and they talk about it sort of edge work, when you're sort of working on the sort of periphery of society and, doing things that are slightly different. And that's what you're doing with the BMX and the street riding. And when you do things that differently, they're either accepted or not. And I think then a lot of this hasn't been accepted, so it's been pushed to the side. And racing was the first in the Olympics because it was more easily regulated, and so now freestyle has been regulated and interpreted and translated into that way that the Olympics can understand, and so really early on I talked about that translation, and so much of it, being so much work I'm trying to do is to translate it in some part, but that's the sort of way of marrying different things up. It's like trying to come to a common understanding of certain things. And again, with skating, there's been some great designs around, different plaza setups where skaters can skate there, or it's a public space, people can do it. Does that make sense? Like,
Mm.
so you know, with that O'Keefe thing, it's really, we all want, I think, a sense of agency. We want to feel like what we do matters and it can change the world. And so young people will find that space away from adults where to do it. And it's the same with the trail guys or whatever. Um, the skate park is a way of controlling young people and putting them into a certain place, but then when adults come there, then it also changes that. And skate parks aren't just for adolescents, they're for everyone, They have to be young to go there. They're for older people, they're for everyone. So even seeing a skate park as a youth space annoys me sometimes
Mm.
because, like, well, is it a youth space? Actually, I think different people go there. And so it's, yeah, because even, yeah, calling something a youth space, it's just, there are things that young people need, but there's also things that older people need. And, you know, riding a BMX makes you feel like a youth, I think, still. Like it makes you feel um young in that sort of way. And, we asked the people in those interviews, we did 26, we asked them why they started riding BMX. And most of them, maybe one or two who started later on in life, said they started as a young person, um, and they either saw someone doing something at a half pipe or racetrack or jumps, and I thought, wow, that's for me. But then also that feeling they got when they put their hands on the grips and they started pedaling, and then it was just like freedom. Nothing could stop them. They were just like jumping off curb. They were just there was just like anything was possible. And I think it's like that's what the BMX does. Like when you grab the grips, it's just like, all right, this could be the best or the worst time. It's just, it's going to be a time like to
Mm.
remember sort of thing. Like it's not always like that, but it could be like that, you know? And I think after you've done it for long enough, and yeah, and this is what we're coming through the research, you know, it's just like, it's just this enabler and this thing that allows you to be different and to be free to move from here to there, but then like to just play and to just grow, you know. And so that is a way of expressing power, you know. And when you get to decide, like I was saying, with the self scaffolding, like you're teaching yourself, you know, and then going into a classroom and having a teacher or someone say to you, hey, you've got to do it this way or that way or this way can be so hard. And funnily enough, the research that we've done, and I've got this paper coming out hopefully next year on with the resilience and well-being, we found that trail riders were the most peer connected, but they were least school connected. That they had a strong sense of agency and basically felt like yeah they could do stuff and it's really interesting because
Yeah,
the
that
type of
is
learning you
super
do when you're
interesting.
digging like when you're digging, you learn in such a different way, don't you? You know, it's not someone telling you, hey, you know, you've got to do it this way, unless you know, you go to a certain place and they're like, hey, you do which has happened to me recently. I won't mention names. It's great. I love it. And shout out to anyone who does build trails because it's such a big one, you know, like, and you can totally get it. Like even some dudes coming to your house, riding your jumps, you know, like you don't want them to fall too, and it's just like it must be so stressful, like you know, having like I think like with Wheels Jam, you know, that's like such a like yeah, you're welcoming people. There's like places you're bringing someone into a space where you feel responsibility for, and there's a lot that comes with that, and from you know getting the jumps ready to also people not hurting themselves, and you know, like it is such a um it's such a big thing that we just do and we just get on with and we don't necessarily reflect on it, which there's nothing wrong with. I'm not necessarily saying we need to think about everything. And there was the physicist Richard Feynman, you know, he's a scientist, but he was also an artist. And he was criticized by artists for saying why scientifically trying to understand everything, you know, but saying, well, it's a different type of beauty. And so trails, there's one beauty that is there's in it just by doing it and writing it, but then there's this other beauty that comes from opening it and understanding it and looking into it. And it's up to you which one you take. You don't have to take them both, you know, and
Mm.
it's like but there's just this different ways of seeing it. And I think as I just get older, it's more just about like just riding and like why have problem? Like why argue about things? Let's just ride and dig and do what you can and all this sort of stuff. But you know, it's just a privilege to be able to ride and yeah, have fun and to be a part of it because you know even like even when you go to a skate park and I'm not like I'm not a what's the word a good rider in the sense of that I'm not that good in I'll just say it like that anyway. But then you go to the some skate park, you do an air, and there's some kid who goes, oh, that's awesome, and like even if it's just like 2 foot 3 foot air, you feel like visible or someone's just like going, oh, that's cool, like, does that make sense? And it's funny because I do monos, heaps of wheelies on my road bikes, and even like up the city streets sometimes I pop a wheelie and I love it. Like, there's I was popping a wheelie. I'd seen this sort of two kids and their dad, and one of the kids looked a bit sort of down and stuff, and I was riding past and I popped a wheelie. He's like, oh, Dad, look at that, that's awesome, and it's just like there's this sort of I don't know, I love still being able to do a wheelie for ages on my road bike, but also and truck drivers are the best. When you do wheelies, truck drivers they always give a thing, but there's something I love about things not being normal in that sort of way where there's just, someone's doing something a bit different. They're taking that risk to just sort of, you know, just put themselves out there or having a crack, and again, it was so funny. One of the themes that came out of our research was, just having a go. Like, and it's so funny. You see dudes sometimes look at trails for the whole day and you can see it just eating them up and they're not jumping them, but they want to. And they're just so psyched out. Um, and for me, that's when you fail. Like, if you give it a go, you get hurt, you didn't fail, you gave it a go. Like, that's
Mm,
where I think, like, that's the whole thing about it, is just even give it a go. Even if you just roll up it or just whatever, give it a go instead of just sitting there doing your head in. If you're doing your head in, do something else, but it's just like, I think you're better off giving it a go and then not getting it than sitting there the whole day spewing about it the next day, fuck, I should have done it, or, because there might not be a next time you get to go to that spot. Just do it. So, but anyway, we'll see. Someone's going to call me out now if I say, oh, I don't know if I should have. Just do it, mate. The 360, the big ones. Oh, fuck. Good night. Oh, it's, yeah. There's a lot in there, I know. But it is, I think, look, the takeaway message for me is like, I'm just trying to understand, and translate that understanding from a different language. And it's not about trying to make trails a certain way or not. It's
mm,
about trying to describe that richness and what people get out of it, but also to be able to figure out how we can help people who are struggling with mental health. Like, we all have mental health issues. I've had in the past, struggle. People struggle, and we know mates that struggle, but we don't always know how to help our mates who struggle. And so that's some of the next work that we're also looking at, is, what we can do in terms of community capacity around mental health and stuff like this. But yeah, so it's, I think just trying to have good times and still to stoke, and that sort of, that's where it's at, I think, for me in the research. Where we want to go is like, yeah, and trying to get some support for that outside to protect what is going on, and to maybe even give the resources, the spaces for this stuff to go on, because there aren't necessarily the places for people to build that stoke, but yeah, like the whole rad share thing is such an awesome thing, or like Jippo, like I was saying to you, in the UK, like those spots, it's just so cool. But yeah,
mm.
oh, what's the time? My God,
That's awesome, man. I love that, and I think that you're certainly heading in the right direction with all of the research that you're doing, and yeah, I just think it's super important, especially with what you just said there. Like, you're almost just trying to give a platform for to showcase the richness of trails. You're not trying to tell people how things are. It's just showcasing it, and that's an important thing. So
yeah.
I love your work, mate. It's been a pleasure to get to know you over the last few years, and I can't believe that you initially emailed me about some research that you were doing, and then from that we've had sessions at the trails, and we've we've been to Ramp Fest and had a ride there in that mid school jam, and yeah, what a trip out, man. It's sick to see all the things you're doing. And
Yeah, cheers. And the funniest thing was when, yeah, your email just doesn't get through to my work email. And it's like, why has this dude got back to me? It's like been 2 months, 3 months.
oh,
And it's
that's
just,
right. Yeah.
what the hell, And then we figured it out. And even this morning,
Even
bloody
this morning.
I don't know, maybe just as they think you're a spammer or something, who knows?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
no, man, thanks a lot. It's been awesome to chat. And
for sure.
yeah, I'm looking forward to, yeah, just I guess I might listen to it back. Who knows? I'll get sick of myself talking for so long. But
No.
appreciate anyone who gets to this point in the whole sort of show. You're committed. Well done.
Yeah. Yeah, well, just lastly, like, so you've got obviously a bunch of research that you're working on. Is there anywhere that people can find you?
Oh yeah, yeah. On my Instagram, I think just Doc Choc BMX is probably the easiest way. I'm on LinkedIn too, Dr. Dave Camilleri. But yeah, if you Google BMX for Life, Melbourne Uni, you'll find our website. There's heaps of stuff that we'll be putting up there over time. Some of this stuff takes ages because it gets peer reviewed, goes back and forth. Can take a year sometimes to get something published. So. I'm working pretty hard to get some of that stuff out. So yeah, I think on the Instagram, that's probably the best to yeah, find me there.
Awesome, man. Well, Dr. Dave, thank you very much, Doc Chalk. Stoked to have this conversation. I could have kept going for bloody hours. It was
Yeah,
interest. It was so
yeah,
interesting to me. So,
thanks.
no, I appreciate you, man, and thanks a lot for everything. And we'll catch a session soon.
Well, sure. Talk soon, mate. Thanks.
Awesome, mate. Bye.